like to go ahead and introduce our speaker. Dr. Anthony Orsini is the Section Chief of Neonatology for Nicholas Children's Pediatric Specialists and Medical Director of Wellness. He's a graduate of Rutgers University and Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. He completed his neonatal fellowship at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital in Philadelphia. He is the author of the book, It's All in the Delivery, Improving Healthcare Starting with a Single Conversation, and has published several papers on the topics of communication in medicine and enhancing the patient experience. His TEDx talk, How the Human Connection Improves Healthcare, has more than 250,000 views. Dr. Orsini's podcast, Difficult Conversations, Lessons I Learned as an ICU Physician, hit the top 100 podcasts on Apple in just 1 week. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Anthony Orsini.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, thank you, everybody, for having me. Is the mic on? Yeah, you can hear me. It's always an honor to be here. Like Deb said, it's been several times I've been asked to speak here, but today it's an exceptional honor to be asked to be doing the opening keynote. I just have to go through my disclosure slides and my learning outcomes. But I thought we'd start this presentation with a little fun video, so we can go ahead and play that and then we'll talk. Oh. Can you play it?
Good morning. I am your AI generator doctor. I have every piece of medical data ever known to man in the history of the world in my data and can make millions of assessments under diagnosis and treatment faster than any human. Why have you come to the doctor today?
Over the past few weeks, my stomach has been hurting a lot, and I have no energy. Every time my body hurts, and a big chest pain. Sometimes I sweat for no reason, my heart races.
Do you have any medical conditions?
I don't have any problems right now, but as soon as I turned 60, I started having aches and pains. My friend died at 60 from a sudden heart attack last year. And since then, I've had chest pains. It seems like all the other symptoms started. I feel like I'm falling apart.
I assure you that all of your body parts are still intact. I observe that you have 2 arms and 2 legs, and they appear to be in working condition. Also, there is no literature that shows a relationship between your friend's cardiovascular disease and yours. You have no shared DNA unless you and your friend are related.
I know that. But what about my joints? They all hurt and I have no energy.
At 60 years old, pain in joints is 68% likely to be due to arthritis. I can send you for some x-rays.
If it's arthritis, what can you do? I'm already taking Advil with no relief.
There are other medications that are stronger, but in general, arthritis is a progressive disease that gets worse with age. I have scanned the literature and will print out a summary of other medications and their side effects for you. In general, it is a slowly progressing disease that will get worse with age.
Okay, great.
I am glad you are happy and approve of the prescribed treatment plan.
What about my stomach pain? Lack of energy, and sometimes my heart races.
I will send you for an EKG, echocardiogram, Holter monitor, stress test, calcium CT, upper GI, schedule for a B12 shot, blood work, and colonoscopy.
That's a lot of tests.
Studies have shown that with these tests, we have an 85% likelihood to diagnose heart disease with AI-generated reading colonoscopy and UGI images are nearly 100%.
Okay, I guess.
Great. Glad you agreed to the plan. See my AI receptionist outside. She will schedule all the tests for you. When we are done with all the tests, I will generate a fact sheet with the 50 most common diseases and treatments that you may have and can take with you. Have a nice day.
So, pretty scary, huh? Well, is that where we're headed? Well, actually, it's just a fun video that we made, ironically, by using artificial intelligence. But it raises some real questions, I think, and highlights some concerns that we all have in healthcare, and the future of healthcare and how AI is going to play into that. By now, all of you have heard of artificial intelligence. It's all over the paper. Some of you may be more familiar with it than others. But very few people really understand all that it really entails. It's something that's accelerating so quickly. I mean, just think about it. 4 years ago, nobody was talking about artificial intelligence. I was giving lectures on COVID and giving lectures on patient experience. And now I'm standing in front of a major nursing conference giving the opening keynote on artificial intelligence. But How did we get here? And what's the future of medicine? Are we all gonna be replaced by robots someday? Will we be getting our healthcare from a kiosk at the mall or from a robot at Walmart or CVS? Will most of our visits be telehealth? Will 15 to 20 premature babies be monitored by artificial intelligence continuously while one nurse is in another room on the other side of the hospital? The answer? Maybe. But when I first learned about artificial intelligence, having spent the last 10 or 20 years teaching about communication and compassionate medicine, when I first learned about artificial intelligence, I'll be honest with you, it scared me to death. But then the more I learned about it, the more I realized that if we use it wisely, we can actually use it to bring us closer to our patients and our families. It's my mission today during this presentation that I hope to succeed in sharing with you my views of artificial intelligence, the future of healthcare, and how we could actually use it to bring us back what really matters. Now, although most of you have heard about artificial intelligence, there is some confusion, so I'll just go through a little bit. These are many, many definitions of artificial intelligence, but really to simplify it, artificial intelligence is any computer that's designed or programmed either by humans or by itself that can do human things, that can think and perform tasks that humans usually do. We have different types of AI. There's narrow AI, which is the simplest type of AI. And in everyday life, that's like Siri, Google. This is all part of AI when it completes, when you're looking for something on the internet and it completes your sentence for you. In medicine, we have different types of AI that can do specific things like read x-rays, read mammographies. Studies have shown that artificial intelligence can read a mammography with 20% more accuracy than the best radiologist. And every day we use AI, just on our phone today, facial recognition. That's a specific example of narrow AI that just does one thing. And then you may hear the term machine learning, which machine learning just means that artificial intelligence now doesn't have to be programmed to do everything, that we can dump data in it and it can actually learn from its mistakes and learn from the new data that we put in, even if the humans didn't even think of it. Ernest Hemingway once said, "My success was gradual and then all of a sudden." I think that's really the history of artificial intelligence today. Artificial intelligence, the term was first coined by a man named John McCarthy in 1950. And then it was a guy named by Alan Turing who was the first person to suggest that maybe someday computers can think like humans. But it kind of sat there and simmered in the back and really didn't do much with artificial intelligence. Spent the time in the back of MIT labs, more theoretical. And then 1990 started to happen, and now we had digital databases that were more available. Computer chips were now faster and smaller. And I'm looking for people who have as much gray hair as I do in this room, but the first artificial intelligence product that was available to the population was something called the Apple Newton. Anybody old enough to remember the Apple Newton? The Apple Newton was the grandfather, if you will, of the smartphone. The Apple Newton gave way to the Palm Pilot, which you may remember. The Palm Pilot then became the BlackBerry. The BlackBerry then became the smartphones. So it really wasn't until the early 1990s that anybody even started using artificial intelligence. And then in 1997 was the famous IBM Deep Blue computer that famously beat the world chess champion, Garry Kasparov. And when that happened, it was on the front page of every newspaper in the world, and AI was off and running. And now we use AI in our everyday lives, whether we realize it or not. We're already using it in the NICU, we're already using it in healthcare, and we're certainly using it in our personal lives. We have programmable thermostats that we could program from another country using our iPhone, that can tell us if our second vacation home, the heat is out and it got too cold, and alert us before our pipes freeze. Alexa and Siri do whatever we ask them to do. Will tell us the weather, shop for us, make suggestions for us. Alexa can control our entire house when we walk in the room, unlock our doors, turn on the lights, put our favorite music on, and dim the lights in the other room. We're using artificial intelligence every single day. When we leave the house, your GPS is a form of artificial intelligence. Picking the best route for you to go from destination A to destination B, and then monitoring your every move in case there's an accident so that could reroute you. Artificial intelligence is part of our lives, and we're using it every day. We don't even realize that it's AI. Now, I made fun of, it was a pretty funny video I thought we made, and I thought it was kind of funny that the computer and the robot couldn't understand emotions and couldn't understand sarcasm. But the truth is that the latest versions of AI now are available that can recognize body language, can recognize tone of voice. Computers that recognize tone of voice have been around forever. A psychiatrist called Nalina Ambady back in Harvard 20 years ago was able to make audio tapes of surgeons who were doing just routine rounds in the hospital, and just by the tone of their voice, the computer was able to predict how many times each surgeon was sued. 0, 1, or more than 2, just by the tone of their voice. And this picture is from Joe Navarro's book, which I highly recommend. Joe Navarro, if you don't know, is a famous hostage negotiator for the FBI, has written many books. But this just goes to show you the map of your face and your body language and the many things that artificial intelligence can tell us. It can tell us if someone's trusting you, if they're not trusting you, if they're being sarcastic, if they're lying, if they really mean what they said. I thought, wouldn't it be great to have this the next time I ask my wife if it's okay to take my only day off to play golf with the boys instead of doing all the chores around the house? Because even after 40 years of marriage, I still don't know when she says, go ahead, honey, whether she's really telling me the truth or not. But artificial intelligence can even read emotions. Artificial intelligence now have autopilot for cars and can tell if the tone of the voice of the car is too loud and maybe the driver is distracted. Every summer I drive to New Jersey from Florida with my wife, and on my truck, every now and then I get a little beeping sound and a cup of coffee. Anybody have that? A little cup of coffee that comes up? Anybody know how that works? Depending on your car, there's artificial intelligence that are looking at how many times you blink per second, the angle of your head, how many times you've moved your hands on the steering wheel, and can tell whether you're tired or not. If you sway, if you're getting into an argument with somebody and you sway into the oncoming lane, will bring you back. My point is that artificial intelligence is making our lives easier. That is the why. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So it's already here. And healthcare and the healthcare business are no idiots. You can see here the massive amount of money that we are investing in artificial intelligence and healthcare. And you can see from this sign in 2024, where we are now, and it's estimated by 2030, we're going to be spending $300 billion a year on artificial intelligence for healthcare. That's incredible. We're already using artificial intelligence in our wearables. I have an Apple Watch. Anybody with an Apple Watch? Fitbit on right now, Garmin. My Apple Watch instantly can tell me what my pulse oximetry is, what my heart rate is, can warn me if I go into AFib. A host of things that can tell me if I'm sleeping enough. There's so many things that this Apple Watch can do, but there's prototypes that are available right now that are half the size of an Apple Watch that can monitor 30, 40, 50, and even 100 different parameters on your health. Wouldn't it be great if we knew all about that? That's Jordan Spieth, and I put that up there because I don't know if we have any golf fans here, but If you haven't noticed, most of the golfers, the professional golfers, are wearing that band on their wrist. Does anybody wonder what that is? Does anybody know what it is? It's called a Whoop. And the Whoop is a band, and I was involved with the company for a little while, no longer, nothing to disclose, but I was wearing it for 2 years. And that device continuously monitors your metabolic rate, continuously tells you whether you're sleeping and how well you're sleeping, can tell you whether you need to work out more the next day or work out less, can divide your sleep into REM, deep sleep, and light sleep, and tell you what you're doing. A friend of mine used it to titrate the amount of alcohol he can drink before he goes to bed. He found out that 1 glass of wine, his REM sleep went up, but by the time he got over 1.5, his REM sleep went down. So he justified that by having a glass of wine before he went to bed. The point is, these wearables are already available and they're getting better. What about healthcare? We're using it already. Enhanced imaging, mammographies that can be read 20% better than even the best radiologists. We have retinal scans that artificial intelligence from a single retinal scan can tell you the age of the patient, what their diseases are, whether they have diabetes, whether they have hypertension, whether they're at risk for hypercholesterolemia, whether they're at risk for other chronic diseases like cancer, all by looking at a single retinal scan without even putting in any input data. Medical documentation, things that we don't want to do. Artificial intelligence can do things better and take away the tedious stuff that we just don't want to do. It can predict whether I'm going to get diabetes in 10 years. It can predict through my DNA and my family history by just dumping in all the databases what my risk of getting arthritis is. Can make all kinds of prediction. It can do personalized medicine by looking at your DNA to tell you this cancer drug is not going to work, but that one will. The idea is just endless what it can do. And of course, research and teaching. What about artificial intelligence in neonatology? Well, we know that artificial intelligence continuously monitors data. But what's the future? And the near future? Well, we monitor pulse oximetry, blood pressures, girth, all the different parameters that we do during hands-on and through cardiac monitoring. Suppose we added 100 more. Suppose we didn't wait for the baby's girth to go up. Suppose we knew that the peristalsis was already changing. I don't know if anybody here has used hero scores. Hero scores have been around for a long time. Anybody still use them? Okay. A hero score, for those of you who don't know, monitors a baby's EKG and looks at the variability in the heart rate. And some studies show that it can predict when a baby's getting septic 20% earlier. This is all by artificial intelligence. Every day we use Billy tools, BPD predictors, early onset predictors. These were all generated largely using artificial intelligence. All of the pictures, by the way, on this presentation, I made with ChatGPT. And it wasn't that hard. I was especially proud of this one because his name is Dr. Artie Fish. I don't know if you know this. But is this really where we're headed? I know 2 things. One is that artificial intelligence is already in our lives. And 2, its integration into medicine is inevitable, right? There's no stopping it. The real question is, how are all the players involved going to integrate it so that it could be beneficial and we don't go down the path that we have with other new technologies? For that to happen, all the parties involved have to have the same goal, which is not necessarily always the case. Hospital administrators have different goals than insurance companies, than billing companies, than nurses, providers, and even patients. But for artificial intelligence to really work and help healthcare, we all have to be involved. But I think we could all agree in this room, healthcare is broken. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. Just look at the numbers, $4.5 trillion a year we spend in the United States alone in healthcare. We have the highest rate of infant mortality of any developed countries with all that money that we spend. 100 million, or almost 1/3 of all people in the United States, don't have a regular primary care physician. And bankruptcy, the medical bills are the leading cause of bankruptcy. This is not because providers aren't trying or nobody cares. This is just a broken system of supply and demand. We just don't have enough providers, and it's going to get worse. So the way I see it is we really have two big crises that I alluded to during the first slide. The first crisis is patient experience. Patient experience is something that's always on our mind, and as healthcare professionals and in the world of neonatology, which I believe we all have a little bit bigger heart than anybody else in medicine, in the world of neonatology, patient experience is near and dear to our heart. The patient experience is difficult. And the other crisis, which I'll talk about tomorrow and remember your why at a deeper depth, is provider experience. Both are major crises, and they both are going to have to be solved if we're going to fix healthcare. So this is Andy. Not really, it's an AI-generated picture, but he represents that there is a real Andy. And Andy's a 79-year-old widower who lives in New Jersey for the last 50 years in the same house. Raises kids there. He's got 2 children. They're both adults and grown up and have moved to other states, and Andy lives by himself. Like most 79-year-olds, Andy has high blood pressure where he takes antihypertensives. He takes Coumadin for his AFib. He takes metformin for his type 2 diabetes. And he takes ocular vitamins for his early macular degeneration. Every day, Andy has to remember to take his medicine. He's got to remember whether he took the blue pill or he forgot to take that. He's got to remember whether it was the green pill that he takes twice a day or the blue pill, and which one he takes with food and which one he doesn't. He has to remember whether it was Tylenol or Advil that he can't mix with his Coumadin because he can't remember which one. And he calls his daughter up from another state and she tries to help him, but he doesn't want to bother her. He goes to see the cardiologist for his AFib. He sees his primary care physician. He sees his ophthalmologist. And he sees his diabetic endocrinologist. He's got to keep on a little piece of paper, the paper calendar on his table, to remember all the appointments that he has to make. And when he drives himself to the hospital or the office for his blood work, he's got to wait and wait and wait. When he gets home, and I know this because this happens with my own father, his daughter calls him up and says, "What'd the doctor say?" And what does he say? "Well, I don't know, nothing." My own father, "Did you ask the doctor about your sugar? Is it getting worse? Did you ask the doctor?" "No, I didn't want to bother him. He looked pretty busy." So now he's trying to navigate this horrible healthcare system in its world. His patient experience, I think, is not only not easy, but also not a good one. And that's for everyone. Most people in the United States here have limited access to care. The average wait for a primary care physician for a routine visit is about 2 to 3 months. A recent study at the University of Chicago showed from the average time that you get put in the treatment room to the time you're back in your car is 17 minutes. This, again, is not because providers don't care. This is just because we have a supply and demand issue. And medical errors continuously be one of the top causes of death in the United States and worldwide. And others just die of poor management of chronic diseases. We did a patient survey a while back ago, I think it was 2016 or whatever. We did it on LinkedIn and Facebook, and we just did a survey. And in that survey, 73% of patients said that when they go to the doctor, they feel rushed. And 63%, more than half, said that they often left without all their questions being answered, like my father. And 47% said they had such a bad interaction that they left. The average wait for a cardiologist and other specialties continuously gets longer and longer and longer. And I don't need to depress you even more by going over all this data. But the point is, healthcare is broken. And yet we're spending more and more money on it every single year. Something has to happen. If I didn't depress you enough, what about provider experience? 60% of physicians and almost 80% of nurses stated that they have at least one symptom of provider burnout. I saw about 20 people go like this. It is a crisis right now. Physicians now have the highest suicide rate of any profession. And it's predicted that by the year 2030, we'll have a shortage of 120,000 doctors and almost 1 million nurses in the United States. Again, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. I hope you'll come because I have a unique perspective, I think, on how we can prevent burnout or at least protect yourself and provide you with 4 insights that will help you protect yourself from burnout, but that's for another day. But provider experience is a problem, okay? I love this study here. It looked at if a primary care physician was going to do everything that he was required to do, it would take him 14 hours a day for preventative care, 7 hours a day to manage his patient's chronic illnesses, 2 hours to treat acute disease, and another 3 hours for documentation. That equals 26 hours a day. Something has to give. And 39% of ICU nurses in the latest survey said they don't get bathroom breaks. And I know everybody here because I've worked in a NICU long enough to know NICU nurses rarely do get bathroom breaks. The system is overwhelmed. And everyone here is special. And I say that with some bias because I'm a neonatologist, but treating premature babies, I'm sorry, is a special type of person. And I think overall, nurses and doctors who treat premature babies, I said it's just a bigger heart. And we want to be there for our patients and families. But this is a very common picture in a NICU. The nurse has got too busy, she's caring for the patient, the doctor's caring for the patient in the back, and the mother's just sitting there quietly in the corner. Now we do our best we can to spend with our patients, but wouldn't you prefer to be with that mother and help her through this and not have to do all the documentation, the charting, and all the other stuff that overwhelms you during the day? This picture's too common. But what if we had an assistant, a personal assistant, that can help us with everything during our daytime and improve both at the same time the patient experience and the provider experience? I've said for years, if I ever won the lottery, first thing I would do is hire a personal assistant like the Hollywood people have. It would be great. Have someone come to the door every day, give them a list, go pick up the dry cleaning, wash the car, cut the lawn, and then all I would have to do all day long is the things that I want to do. When my wife hands me the to-do list, I just hand it to him, and then I go play golf. Would be amazing. But what if we had that in the NICU? What if we had a personal assistant that could continuously do all the tedious stuff that we don't want to do? Who likes charting? Who likes writing notes, documenting? Who likes looking at data that means absolutely nothing? I'll go back to my hospital tomorrow, and I'll come back and there'll be 400 lab values that are abnormal for me to look at. And they're all normal because they're adult values. Wouldn't I rather spend my time being a physician, being a nurse, caring for the patient, putting your hands on the baby, comforting the mother? Wouldn't that be better for the patient experience and the provider experience? Every year, I have to go see my doctor at least twice a year. He makes me go for my blood pressure meds. I mean, I have high blood pressure. He won't give me my prescription unless I go every 6 months. So every 6 months, I take a day off. I try to remember, because even though I'm a physician and you think he'd be nice to me, if I'm 2 days late, I go without my blood pressure meds. So I got to make sure that I go. I take the day off. I go to the office. I wait in the waiting room. I get called back to the treatment room. The med tech or the nurse, she takes my blood pressure one time. She asks me a bunch of questions while she's facing the computer doing her check down menu. The doctor comes in, he says hello, big smile, asks me the same questions, pretends to listen to my heart because he's got to touch me. So he puts the stethoscope on my heart. I know he's not listening. I've done it myself. Okay, you're fine. Because he's got to touch me because he can't bill. So he goes, and then he says, okay, I'll write you out a script. He writes me out a script. I bring it over to CVS. I wait for it. I fill it out. Wouldn't it be better for me and for him if I had a wearable that monitored my blood pressure every day? And then at the end of 6 months was downloaded not to the doctor to look at, but to artificial intelligence, who then reviewed it, sent me an email with a bunch of questions, responded to my emails, went back and forth just like a human being, and if everything worked okay, go pick up your meds at CVS. Wouldn't that be better for me and for him? And now all of a sudden, the person who's sick that needs to go to a primary care doctor, she can get a visit because there's a spot. Wouldn't that be great? Artificial intelligence, if used correctly, can do this. What can it do? We talked about it. It can do screening like mammographies, etc. It can manage our chronic diseases. It could tell Andy, your glucose is a little bit low. It can alert the doctor when the glucose gets too low or his blood pressure gets too high. It can remind them, by the way, you forgot to take the blue pill twice today, you only took it once. It can make appointments for him and maybe not even need to go into his car at 79 years old to drive to the hospital in the city to get a routine exam where the doctor pretends to listen to his heart. There's so many things that AI can do for us and make our lives easier and better. Office visits would decrease. That would increase availability. The length of stay at the hospital. We used to send babies home on monitors to try to get them home earlier, and then what happened is we had a whole bunch of false alarms. The doctors were being called. I did apnea in New York City for 10 years. We don't know how to interpret the downloads. Are they real or not? This is easy stuff for artificial intelligence. Maybe we could send the baby home 4, 5, 6, 7 days earlier with a home hospital where an artificial intelligence can tell if this pulse oximetry decrease is actually real or not and notify us. This is all stuff that we can do. Decrease length of stay, that's amazing. We could decrease diagnostic errors. When I'm looking at a baby and I come up with my differential diagnosis, ChatGPT can tell me, hey, did you think of this? And I don't have to agree with it, but maybe it would. And by the way, everyone in this room probably hates Google Doc. Google Doctors kills me every day now, especially later. I'd like you to compare the same question when you Google it and you put it into ChatGPT. When you put in, I'm getting a lot of babies in newborn nursery now where the mothers, for some reason, have decided not to give vitamin K, right? You said right here, you should. Absurd, dangerous. If you Google, when you go home, Google, should I give my baby vitamin K? You'll get all kinds of stuff. You'll get good stuff from the American Academy of Pediatrics. You'll get some wacko on Facebook who decided that vitamin K causes cancer. You'll get ads. You'll get a whole bunch of stuff. And the average person, there's no way that that person can decide which is real and which is not. And so what do we tell people? Don't go on Google. But they do. Now put that into ChatGPT. The difference is ChatGPT is, the algorithm only looks at real sites, real studies, New England Journal of Medicine, American Academy of Pediatrics. It doesn't allow the crazy person from Facebook to put stuff in there. It doesn't look at that, it automatically knows. My point is, it's a great tool for your mothers to use. If they're gonna go on the internet, say, use ChatGPT. Anybody here have not used ChatGPT yet? Oh, wow, it's the greatest thing ever. There's a free version, it works great. So the parents don't have to pay for it. Just tell them, if there's more information you want about NEC or prematurity or what IVH means or what does an ROP mean, put that into ChatGPT. I'd like you to go home and play with it because it's actually very, very accurate. Now, it's not 100% accurate, but wouldn't it be great to save time if you were going to see your physician and you had a whole bunch of questions to look them up in ChatGPT and then you could review them with your doctor or your nurse. I read this. So if anybody's going on to Google Doc, say ChatGPT is free, please do it. And of course there's bias, and AI in the future could even do minor procedures. So if we had that personal assistant, this could be us, instead of that other picture. Instead of the mother sitting in the back while we're doing all this tedious stuff like charting and measuring and doing all this other stuff, we can then do what we were really born to do. Care for premature babies and emotionally support the families. Wouldn't that be a wonderful world? So, are we gonna just be replaced? No, because there's certain things that AI cannot and will never be able to do. We know the power of skin to skin. We know what it does for the babies. We know what it does for the parents. We know the bonding. We know the power of the human touch. It doesn't even matter whether it's a baby and a mother. Studies have shown just by one person touching another person, the oxytocin levels in that person's body, which is the hormone of bonding, go up, even if it's two adults. And the cortisol levels in their blood go down just by touching. And although artificial intelligence can tell me that you're sad or you're distrustful, it'll never replace the human touch, because medicine at its core is human to human. So it's really, we don't have to worry about being replaced. It promotes bonding, improves patient compliance, and we know beyond a doubt that when a patient or a family trusts their caregiver, trust their nurse or their doctor, that not only does the compliance go up, they take their medications, they're more likely to follow up, they're more likely to trust their physician or their nurse, and the babies and the mothers have better outcomes just by establishing trust. You can see the look on a mother's face when you're a neonatal nurse. When you've established that bond with her and she's leaving the critically ill baby at 11 o'clock at night to go home, and she knows the nurse, even if she met the nurse that same day, and she feels a connection with that nurse, that mother goes home a little bit better, a little less nervous. And studies have shown that no matter how good computers get, people trust people. How do I go back? So this is Andia and Keith. Andia and Keith were patients of mine. We have some Winnie people here, maybe they even know Andia and Keith. About 4.5 years ago, Andia and Keith was a very young couple, totally in love, and having a baby. Andia read every book, took care of her baby, took her prenatal vitamins, and by all accounts, everything was going well. And then at 23 weeks and 1 day, Andia went into preterm labor, was rushed to the hospital, and within a few hours, delivered. I got to meet them very quickly for the consult right beforehand. Little Isaac was born at 23 and 1/7. And Isaac was typically 23-weeker on a jet ventilator, but doing okay. For the first 14 days, had a typical week course for a 23-weeker. And then on the 15th day, Isaac's belly got distended, started to turn blue. His blood pressure dropped. And before you know, within hours, he was on epinephrine drips, 100% oxygen, and everybody in this room knows he perforated. Surgeon came, put a drain in, decompressed the belly, and then we had conversations. The surgeon spoke to the parents about pros and cons of doing surgery now, first waiting for the antibiotics and the epinephrine to see if they can make him more stable, and wait a couple days knowing that he may not make it and he may die before he goes to the OR. Difficult decision. Now, what could AI do here? AI can give them other statistics. If you wait, it's 56% chance, and if you don't wait, it's 48% chance. Actually, it's more like 18 and 10. The point is that Andy and Keith didn't look at the statistics. They're a young couple who had no idea how to make that decision. So what did they turn to? The doctors and nurses that they came to trust. And together we all made a decision. It was their decision, but we made it together. And it took some crying and it took some holding. And that night they decided to send Isaac to the OR. Isaac went to the OR. 6 hours after he got back, he passed away. Now you would think that Andia and Keith would be angry, would second guess themselves, would think maybe we should have waited. They were none of that. Andy and Keith were grateful. And still we keep in touch and are still grateful to the nurses and doctors who gave them those 15 days. But more importantly, they said to me, the best moment was when the nurses and doctors were all sitting down, and I looked in their eyes, and I could tell that they cared about Isaac. That is not something you're going to get from artificial intelligence. That is something that you only get because medicine is human to human. That book, Catching Meteorites, Andia was a journalist, and she wrote a book for premature babies, the parents of premature babies. It's kind of like a photojournalist book, and donated thousands of them to NICUs all over the country. And the reason why they call it Catching Meteorites, because they said Isaac was like a meteorite. Came into our lives, he made a big splash, and then he was gone. This is why AI won't replace us, but can certainly help us. But be careful. Don't go down the road that we've gone down before, the road of electronic medical records, which was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Traditionally, doctors and nurses are very resistant to technology. And what happened when the electronic medical record started to be formed? We just basically said, we don't want it. We don't want to be involved in it. We just like the way we're doing it now. And what happened? It happened anyway. We were told it was going to be seamless documentation across all platforms, and no matter where the patient was, you can grab their charts. That there would be universal medical records, and it would take away all of our tedious stuff. Does it sound familiar? That it would reduce medical errors and be more transparent. But what was the reality? What actually happened? If you look at the data, it doesn't save any time. There's no interoperability yet, even years later. We get a lot of junk. I had a pediatrician call me just a week ago from a discharge summary from an Epic discharge summary that said, I can't read 27 pages. Just tell me what happened. Junk in, junk out. And there's a bunch of security issues, and there's a whole bunch of issues. Our hospital just went from Cerner to Epic, and I have never seen so many people were so stressed out and yelling, right? These poor Epic people, there were 50 of them, and they were being yelled at. Well, what do you mean? I don't want to do it that way. Well, you weren't there when they asked you, and now you want us to change the whole thing. My point is, we don't want to go down that road. Atul Gawande once said, the electronic medical record is a system promised to increase my mastery over my work. Instead, it has increased my work's mastery over me. Does anybody relate to that? We were doing a patient experience consult about a year ago, and the hospital wanted to show me their brand new offices that they had for their doctors. They had just opened it up. And they literally, the architects made it so that if the doctor needed to type on the computer, he had to or she had to turn her back on the patient. They actually had it facing this way. Not that in the beginning, having a computer in the room already stops dehumanism in medicine. But the point is, nobody asked us. The Army and the Armed Forces has a term called ground truth. It means when the generals want to know something, they ask the privates on the ground, what do you think? And a private will say, well, that's pretty stupid. That's very muddy over there. And that's what happened with electronic medical records. So my point is, there's a lot that can go wrong with artificial intelligence. There's a lot of questions. Will we go down the same path at EMR where it's actually making our lives worse? Who's going to be responsible? What about malpractice? In that video, you said the robot said, I'll give you the 50 biggest, most common things that you might have. Does that mean as a physician, I'm going to have to do a test on all 50 of those? And if I don't, does that mean it'll be used in court? There's certain biases that are already in ChatGPT and other things. HIPAA guidelines. Can you imagine if we're relying on artificial intelligence and then all of a sudden we had ransomware? It's one thing when Epic goes down. Can you imagine now you can't even monitor a baby? So there's still a lot that can go wrong, and a lot of big companies are trying to take over AI. So the message of this of this presentation is, this is not what we want. We don't want to be nurses and doctors from the 25th century. We're robots. But what we really do want is we want to work with our IT people. We want to work with artificial intelligence and welcome it and understand it and learn about it. Artificial intelligence is increasing at such an accelerated rate that experts say that in 5 years, the power will be 30 times more. And in 10 years, it'll be 1,000 times more powerful. That's the equivalent to having our cars fly in 5 years and go to the moon in 10 years. That's crazy, but we have to be involved with it. Don't be afraid of artificial intelligence, because I do really think that it can bring us back to what really matters. It can make us be who we want to be, and instead of being mastered by the electronic medical records, we can do what we really want to do, and that's care for premature infants and their families. And so thank you for listening. I hope that I resonated with you. Thank you so much, and I'll take as many questions as you want. So thank you. Questions?
Who has a question?
Hello, thank you for your talk. My name is Catherine Debbie. I'm from the University of Alabama, and I'm a NICU nurse that went rogue and decided to get advanced degrees in AI.
Oh, good.
Learning. So I have a couple questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
You did mention it briefly, but most importantly, foundational to any AI machine learning algorithm, we've got to have quality data. And all of you sitting here as NICU nurses have to be not complacent with that. No copying and pasting when you're putting that data in. Life decisions are being made off of that data that you're inputting into that electronic health record. Another thing is, I love how you said, what happens if the AI breaks, or it's no longer, I've actually talked a lot about that in my work as well. And that's why we as nurses can't be totally complacent with the AI. We have to still remember where we came from, all those critical thinking skills. We cannot not do that and just be complacent with that technology. Another thing is, who's informing these AI algorithms? Our algorithms, predictive analytics, are only as good as the programmers, and the people at the table who are sitting saying, what are we going to do with this data? What's this pattern going to show? It's us, the neonatal nurses, the neonatologists, the whole healthcare team that needs to be a part of these algorithms. So thank you.
Thank you. I think, yeah, that's a great point. And the point of this whole presentation is we want to get back to what we really want to do. And we can design and help design AI so that we can do that. We don't want to be documenters and charters and, constantly looking at lab values that aren't even abnormal. So AI, but we have to be involved, and I think that's the whole point. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much. What recommendations do you have for us to take back to our facilities so that we can be involved, so we can get ahead of it? Because, like you said, oftentimes folks don't show up to answer the questions, and then when something gets implemented, we're mad about it. So how can we get ahead of it and try to do the right thing this time?
I think the first thing is we have to be knowledgeable, right? And I think that was the problem with electronic medical records. It was the see no evil, hear no evil. So although most of us have heard about AI, sometimes you just hear people like Elon Musk telling you it's going to take over the world, or the Transformers and all this kind of stuff. But realizing that you're using it already, right? And that it's part of the future. So I think this young lady said over here that you do have to make sure that your data is good, your data is bad. Use it, embrace it. There's a lot of opportunities. There's companies that are all that contact, not just me because I give this lecture, but everybody. We need help, doing this algorithm. We need help with this. But there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to be involved. But I want you to see it as not a threat, but as something that can save we as providers, but also healthcare. And if you do that, but I guarantee you that if we don't, it's just going to make things even worse. That's my opinion. I mean, you're the AI expert, but you have to be involved, and most experts will tell you that's exactly what happened with the electronic medical records. They said, if you don't want to be involved, we'll do it the way we want to do it. And who did it? The billers and the insurance companies. So, yeah.
You're exactly right. I was on one of the super user teams, and when I would go to the IT people who were building the page and say, hey, we need this, because this is what, like, for instance, an isolate temp, servo, control mode, we need that in the electronic health record. And they looked at me and they said, 80-20. This unit's very specialized, we're not doing that. I'm like, well, then you are jeopardizing patient care, you're jeopardizing patient safety.
Yep. And we have, you can buy the cheap Epic, you can buy the expensive Epic, you can buy the Epic that only goes by adults and thinks that preemies are the same as adults. And so we have to be forward thinking to make sure that we as a group and the preemies are represented equally in this. I mean, I had a mother last year who called the NICU in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. crying because her baby was in renal failure, and the nurse said, where did you get that from? And she said, well, I checked the portal, the potassium was high. I went on Google. Google said your potassium's high when you're in renal failure, and she wanted to know if her baby needed a transplant. So this is what happens when you have good intentions, but there's no ground truth. We have to be the ground truth.
Well, that sounds great to me, but I've been doing this a long time. Never once has anyone wanted any input from anyone I've ever known. So that sounds great. You got to get involved. You got to get in there. Anytime we ask anything, as with any specialty unit, they say, oh, sorry, that's just too hard, and we're not making it special for you, and who do you think you are? So seriously, that all sounds good, and I would love that. They built a new hospital, they never ask anyone, like you said. You go in the office, and the doctor has his bag with the patient. We have a whole hospital that's built like that. They didn't care about finding out how a hospital should be built in the physical sense. They really don't care about what we think, how we can make our charting better. So really, if you have any concrete real ideas, that all sounds great, and I would love to get involved, but they just rather us leave them alone, I find.
I think that's true to an extent. However, you have to get involved in the early. So after they spent $1 billion making Epic without any ground truth or very little ground truth, and then they bring it into the hospital and Tony Orsini says, I want Epic to do this, then they laugh at you. But the difference with AI is that I think we're early on and we can get involved. And there are companies out there, there's a company right now that I could tell you that's doing AI for bilirubins, et cetera, like that. And they're looking for nurses and doctors to be involved in this because they want to know. The company that contacted me about bilirubin and AI, I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, but that's not the way we do it. And they were very, very happy to take notes and say, okay, because we want to make this better. You have to get involved early. And I know that I've had some same experiences. I've been told there's no way of not getting 400 lab values in 2 days that I have to click on. That is a total waste of my time. And you know what's going to happen? I'm going to get so fast with the clicking, it's okay, that I'm going to miss one. And so I feel for you, and I've had that same frustration. I think that we just have to do it earlier. And I think this is the time for AI.
Any other questions?
My name is Linda. I'm from Methodist South Nicholson in Dallas, Texas. I've been a NICU nurse for 32 years. And as I was saying in our leadership meeting this morning, one of the challenges that I see with the neonatal population is even regionally, and I've worked in several places, there's no standardization. You know, everybody picks and chooses what they want to practice out of the most recent literature or out of literature from 15 years ago. With AI, I think we have to have more standardization, and until we as a division of healthcare agree to improve standardization, I don't see how you can really marry the two together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're a pretty new specialty, right? That's one of the issues with neonatology since I was trained, right? The first premature baby, first NICU was started in 1968 or something like that. So I agree with you that we do need better standardization. My fear, we may be able to use AI, and the algorithms that we're needing to do are going to require standardization. So you may get to the point where we have to do an algorithm here, like the new Billy tool, right? The new Billy tool is a great example of how we're standardizing bilirubin studies, and I'm sure everyone uses that now. But we're standardizing Billy tool when people made that algorithm, that kind of forced us to go by the Billy tool. And I don't know of anybody that's poo-pooed the Billy tool, right? We pretty much follow the AAP guide. So that we made the Billy tool, the AAP guideline said, this is how we want to do it. The Billy tool was matched with that, and now we all use it. So I think we can do both things at the same time. And it may force us, because now we need algorithms, to say, okay, what do you want to do? You know, what's the algorithm going to say? What is abnormal? What is abnormal? We got a long way to go. And I think even though it's accelerating quickly, we just have to be the guardians of the babies and the guardians of the mothers to make sure that we're making those decisions and it's making our lives easier and the patient's lives easier and not making it harder like the electronic medical record has. So I hope that resonates with everybody. So, all right, thank you.
It's an incredible way to kick off our conference, and we appreciate it greatly. I think it's given us a lot of food for thought, and I would encourage you to hang on to some of those tensions that I think a talk like this creates when we think about our realities and how do we adjust our realities to...
I didn't mean to create tension. So.
Spark some thinking, and I think that's why we're all here, is to have some critical conversations and to challenge our beliefs. So I appreciate that you kicked us off with taking on that